Hi y'all, thanks so much for stopping back by. If this is your first time here, then welcome. My name is Lori Livers. I know, it looks like livers, but it sounds like livers. So my name is Lori Livers, and on this channel we talk about how I create almost completely passive income using rental properties. We talk about DIY home improvement, and we talk about everything planning and organizing because for me, that's what makes all the rest of this stuff possible. I hope that sounds interesting to you. If it does, please do subscribe and ring the bell down below so that you can be notified of all the new videos coming your way. As an investor or even just a homeowner, you're going to find yourself in situations where you've got to do some improvements or repairs or something to your property. And you're going to find yourself wondering, should I DIY it or should I hire a professional to come in and take care of this for me? And both are the right answers, just depends on the circumstances. So this video is all about how I decide what to DIY versus hiring a professional. Let's get to it. So before we get too far into this, I need to just admit right up front that I am a DIYer at heart. I love DIY projects. I love planning the projects or preparing for the projects. I love doing the projects, and I love seeing the results when I get it done. I am a total DIY nerd. But sometimes DIY just doesn't make sense. My first DIY deal breaker is any project that requires a permit from the city. I'm not a licensed contractor, so anything that requires a permit from the city is probably over my head and definitely beyond my skill level. So that's my first deal breaker. Anything that requires a permit from the city, I am not going to attempt to DIY. My second DIY absolute deal breaker is what I call problematic. And for me, problematic is anything that's going on either in my own home or in any of my rental properties that I don't absolutely know what the problem is. And this is usually something that's either electrical or plumbing related. I'm not a licensed plumber for sure, and I'm absolutely not a licensed electrician either. So when it comes to electricity and plumbing repairs, anything that I don't know what the problem is for sure, it's got to be diagnosed, I always leave that to the pros. Those are critical functions of your home, whether it's your own home or your rental property, and you don't want to take any chances there because the integrity of your structure could be at risk. The safety of your tenants or even your own family could be at risk. And for me, those are risks that are just not worth taking. So anything that needs to be diagnosed and I don't know what the problem is, it's absolutely not something that I'm going to attempt to DIY. However, I will try to DIY just about anything else. One of the big caveats to this that allows me to be able to take on these DIY projects is that I use my rental property investment strategy to leave my 9-to-5 behind. So I have the time to go into my properties or even my own home and handle these DIY projects. And time is something that's really important to consider before you decide to DIY. Do you have the time to do it right? Do you have the time to figure out exactly what needs to be done and plan the project and then execute the project? For me, I can answer yes to that because I use this strategy to leave my 9-to-5 behind. I don't have to be anywhere on anybody else's schedule, and these are the types of projects that I really enjoy taking on. So I love the opportunity to DIY something. The simplest DIY project I can think of off the top of my head is a paint project. It's pretty straightforward, and it doesn't require any expensive tools or supplies. But this paint project, or any paint project, lives and dies by the quality of the prep work that's done. You have to take the time to properly prep a paint project if you expect to get professional results. And once all the prep work is done, the taping off, the this, the that, then the next most important thing to remember in a paint project is to just take your time. If you have the time and patience to prep a paint project well, you certainly do not need to hire a professional. This is the ideal DIY beginner project so that you can build your confidence and get a little bit more comfortable with doing some of these things around either your own home or even your investment properties. Now, in my opinion, there is certainly a caveat to that. I do not try to DIY cabinetry paint projects. I don't have a paint sprayer in my garage, and in my opinion, I think in order to do a cabinetry paint project well, you've got to have it sprayed, and it's got to be sprayed with a high quality paint, and it's got to be done pretty quickly, because if not, the paint starts drying all funky and you get all these weird textures, and that's probably not the results you're looking for in painting cabinetry. So in my opinion, it's always best to hire a professional to handle a cabinetry paint project, but just about anything else can be handled DIY. You could do it. Other fairly simple DIY projects are things like adding motion detector switches. At my house, nobody ever turns off the light in the pantry, and I finally got tired of going behind the whole family to turn off the light in the pantry. I installed a $14 motion detector switch. Light comes on automatically, light comes off automatically. Super simple DIY project, and it doesn't irritate me anymore because the light doesn't get left on. So something like that, or even adding a ceiling fan, super simple DIY project. So that's an electrical based type DIY. You don't need to be afraid of electricity, you just need to be educated about it. Of course, you can find all the information you could even imagine about changing out a light switch or installing a ceiling fan or other simple electrical based DIY projects around the home on YouTube, because really, what can we not learn on YouTube? Another pretty simple DIY project is changing out appliances. For instance, if you need to replace a broken dishwasher, you can pay somebody several $100s to come into your house, pull out your old dishwasher, bring in your new dishwasher, and get that all installed for you. But changing out a dishwasher is surprisingly simple. It is much easier than you think. And again, you can find 100 videos on YouTube that show you just exactly how simple that is. So that's another one that I am really comfortable and confident in taking on that DIY type project by myself, is something like changing out an appliance. Outside of the obvious tools, skills, and knowledge that a professional will have, there are two other really important factors to consider when trying to decide if you're going to DIY a project or if you're going to hire somebody to do it. And the first one is time. A professional can move through a project faster than you can every single time, just because they do have the skills, the tools, and the knowledge to do the job. If you're like me, you're not a professional tradesperson. And so a professional who does have that skill and that knowledge and all those perfect tools to do this job are going to be able to get through this much faster than I could, much more efficiently than I could every single time. The second, and a really, really important reason to hire a professional rather than to DIY a project, especially in your rental properties, is to protect a relationship with your tenant. It's really, really important to me to keep long-term tenants. It is just easier. It saves me time, it saves me money, it's easier on my tenant to not have to move. So anything I can do to protect that relationship with my tenants and keep a good tenant long-term is absolutely worth it to me. One time I had a tenant in a house that was convinced the water lines were switched somewhere between the water heater and every other cold tap water line in the house. And bless his heart, he was convinced there was a plumbing problem in the house that was causing the water to come out just too warm on his cold water tap. Now, we live in a very, very, very hot part of the country in the summertime. Like, it is hot here. So I suspected that the water was coming out warmer than he expected it to, because it's very, very hot outside. It had been over 100 degrees every day for more than 10 days. But I didn't want to tell my tenant, hey, it's hot outside. It makes sense that the water coming out of your tap is going to be hot. Did you try letting it run for a few minutes? Rather than go through that and creating any animosity with my tenant, who is a great tenant, I just decided to call a plumber. Even though I really felt like I knew there was no problem, I was willing to spend the $35 that a service call was going to cost me with my plumber to have my plumber go out and check and see if there was an issue. For me, the $35 is a nominal expense to protect that relationship with my tenant. And who knows, if there is a problem, that $35 is going to get credited to the repair, and I've got to make that repair anyway. So I really had nothing to lose in sending out a plumber to deal with the issue. When the plumber arrived, he checked everything out and he determined that there was no problem, that the water was coming into the house really, really hot, because it's really, really hot outside and has been for a while. But having a neutral third-party plumber explain that to my tenant removes the tenant and myself from any type of situation where we can disagree on it. I'm not a professional plumber. My tenant is not a professional plumber. My tenant had a plumbing concern. We brought out a professional plumber, and the professional plumber explained to him that the concern is really not a concern at all. So my tenant's happy. I acted on his behalf. I'm happy. My plumber's happy. He made an easy $35, and we all move on down the road. Now, had I been the one to tell my tenant, hey, dude, it's hot outside, I mean, what did you expect? The water is hot because the earth is hot where we live right now at this time. He probably would have felt like I wasn't taking his concern seriously. And when it comes time to renew his lease, he might have thought, hey, if she doesn't take this concern seriously, what other concerns is she not going to take seriously? And he might have started looking for another house. I don't want that to happen. He's a great tenant. So for $35, we're all good. So for me, in my business, working with professionals that can handle these types of situations for my tenants is incredibly important. And because of this, I never DIY a project in a house with a tenant living in it. I don't want to put myself in that situation. I don't want to put my tenants in that situation. I need that project. If there is an issue, I need that issue to move along quickly and efficiently, and a professional is going to be able to handle that faster than I could. And I think it's kind of uncomfortable for a tenant to have the landlady in their house changing out a dishwasher. I don't want to put them in that situation. I want them to be happy. I want them to stay for a long time. I want them to keep paying that rent on time every month. So I never DIY a project with a tenant living in the house. Now in a vacant home, or even my own home, I DIY anything and everything I feel confident doing. I have the time to do it because I've created this passive income stream to allow me that time. I didn't want to go work for somebody else. And I love spending my time improving these projects where I can see the results of it and knowing that I am improving that property for myself and my family. It's very satisfying for me. I look forward to it. I enjoy it. It's one of my favorite parts of the entire process. So I DIY every single thing I think I can do in either my vacant houses or even my own home. Oh, and coming up soon, I'm going to be sharing a lot of those projects with you. That's just a little insight into how I decide what I'm going to DIY and what I'm actually going to hire a professional for. I hope this is interesting to you, and I hope you want to see some of these DIY projects and also the professional projects coming your way. If so, please do hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you can be notified of all that stuff, and you'll get to see it when the videos come out. Also, drop down into the comments, say hi, hang out for a few minutes. It'd be good to get to know y'all. Until next time, bye y'all.
I need more coffee to help find my words. So, one of the simplest DIY projects, why do I always say so? I'm gonna stop saying so. Just cut this tape altogether.